Hello and welcome back. Thank you to everybody that has stayed with us. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, and I'm grateful. As I made mention earlier, this part of the show we're going to be looking into what has been going on with our children over this our A level results over this summer. Last week we saw. Well, I say last week, 2 weeks ago, we saw what happened with the Scottish system, and it was a nightmare. As a result of the whole COVID lockdown, the children have not been able to, our teenagers have not been able to take their A level exams. And as a result of that, a lot of them, the government decided that they would go with, initially they told us it was going to be what their teachers said from their mock exams. But then we now find out that an algorithm had been used, which, made sure that the children who are from the more affluent areas gets all the A's and the wonderful grades, and those who are not from the more affluent parts of town are left with the not so kind grades that doesn't allow them, including some of the intelligent ones from amongst them. And so it's been crazy. It's been a nightmare. But my guest is a teacher. She's well versed in this. She's been teaching for 15 years and some, and she understands exactly how this works. And if you were watching us last week, you would have met her already. She was very, very passionate. So let me not keep her much longer. Let's welcome back to the show our head of maths, Mrs. Pamela Adodo. Auntie Pam, as
Thank
I
you.
call you, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me back.
It's so
What
good
have
to
we
be able
been
to see
thinking?
your pretty face today.
Oh, I think we got a glimpse of it last week, just before technical issues forced
It
us
was
off
just so
of
unfair that we
visual.
couldn't
Yeah,
see you, but it is so. I'm so glad that we got to do this again so soon. So
yeah,
now we can see you. So welcome.
yeah.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
as much as I don't have a child at this time that's going through this A level nightmare, as it were. But what did it mean? For instance, when we all heard that the government has done a U-turn on, it, because let me rewind that and do it better. So we were speaking about this last week, and
Mm,
the understanding was that the results were going to come out this week, and that the government had said that they were not going to go the Scottish route. So
mm,
we expected that the results will be one that will be based on what the teachers had said primarily about their students.
mm,
But as it turns out, an algorithm has been used. And
mm,
so we now have teachers who, I say teachers and students alike, especially the students, who were expecting triple A's, who were expecting A stars, who were expecting, some of the high grades are now being given grades that they do not recognize, nor do their teachers. And it has caused a lot of problems. Now, the government has suddenly had a U turn on it. What does it mean for the education system here in the UK? This forced U-turn of the government, and
okay.
a little bit
So,
about the impact on the children.
so in the first place, I know the news headlines would have us believe that it was based on a decision based on affluence, but that wasn't the whole story.
Okay.
The reason why it seemed like students from private schools fared better was because they took a 3 year timeline of how a school had performed. What the algorithm failed to do was account for the outliers. Remember when we spoke last week, I said, a school um, has its history of results that it produces, and a school that's always, for example, one of the very popular comprehensive Brampton Manor, who've always produced a high percentage of students going to Oxbridge, will have a set of results to prove that from the assessment. So what the algorithm um, sought to do was to match outcomes based on previous performance. But what it failed to take into account were outliers in the system, and schools that were, say, for example, coming out of a time in their timeline where they'd had poor results and they were now turning it around. So
Mm,
that's where you had the greatest outcry, where schools who were in the past had produced poor results suddenly had turned things around, maybe had a change of management and a change of teaching, had a different approach, and the algorithm didn't take that into account. So it gave out it calculated results based on previous performance, and that was where it really fell down on its face.
Wow. But what does that mean now? Thank you for explaining that to us, because for most of us, like we rightly said, we are hooked on the headlines, and the headlines are not kind. So it's good to know, what's happened, what really happened. But what does that mean now for the education system going forward?
So it depends on it largely depends on if we find ourselves in this situation again, and I hope we don't.
Mm,
But it just means that there'll be a closer we'll be taking a closer look. There'll be closer scrutiny on us,
mm,
ourselves, and we parents as well, looking a lot closer at choice and selection of school. You know, it's unfair that you find yourself in a catchment area and where the school has historically not produced good results. I
mm.
think choice will be one of the biggest outcomes of this. What school should I send my child to in case I find this again? And what faith do I have in the school that my child goes to? But in, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Schools are always looking to improve. Even if you have an Ofsted rating of outstanding, every school is always looking to do better than the next year. So depend whatever your targets. So whatever your targets as a from a teacher perspective, your set targets to meet. Wherever our targets are, we're always seeking to improve on our past results. So it just means greater scrutiny on our part, but it also means a lot more commitment from parents and from the students alike.
Okay. Now, one of the fallouts that we're seeing at the moment is that the students are complaining. If we've been watching the news in recent days, they've been very successful at featuring the girls that wanted to do engineering, for instance. And unfortunately, some of them have lost their places. And some of the universities will not be able to accommodate them now. And some are being told to take a year out and come back next year, and so on. What as a teacher, you see students every day. What kind of an impact would this have had on their confidence, on their person as a whole?
It shouldn't. For a child who's determined to go to university and who's determined to get greater outcomes, it will have it should have a short term knockback effect. But then again, as with everything in life, you pick up yourself and go again. Having
Mm,
said that, the universities have been encouraged, and they this morning I heard in the news they're asking the government for more funded places. The funding formula will have to be looked at. Some people are asking that the international places are giving up, but the international places come with a funding package,
yeah.
and that would greatly impact. But as much as possible, as many universities are going to accommodate those students that they've offered places to. As you know, the UCA system is you've got your firm place, you've got your insurance offer. So those conversations are happening, and every child will be listened to, and it's down to the admissions officers now to make that judgment call.
Mm, mm. Okay, thank you for that again. But do you think the students are being given the right tools to progress in life when we see things like this happening? Because I mean, in this particular situation, I think it's so unique in that they've just had the COVID season where their lives were disrupted and completely turned upside down for some. And then you go into this situation where there is the uncertainty. But you think that they're being given the right tools to be able to progress, in
Um,
life?
if the, I the tools when you speak of tools, I mean the tools that make you succeed in life are those soft skills, and they're not tied to grades.
Right.
They largely come from how you respond to any setback. And even when you go for job interviews or you start a business or wherever you find yourselves, the tools of resilience, of self-management, leadership. Those are the tools that you really need. And this is a trial. It's no doubt is a test, but it's not enough to not the end of the world, and it's not enough to break a student's spirit. I also say this: there's also a place for maturity in going into education. I mean, some of the youngsters who go in quite young tend to struggle a lot more. So being asked to take a year out, or have a year to experience life in a different way before you go back to education, I believe puts you in a better frame of mind to be able to cope with the challenges. A lot of these children haven't lived away from home. A lot of them haven't had to self-care or self-manage. And we've seen in popular media that people who go take out year outs do learn a skill, go traveling, do different things. So it's in us not being able to, or in the system not being able to provide the grades, doesn't mean necessarily equate to a detooling, if you like.
Okay.
um, Rather they have a chance to you know showcase the soft skills and the life skills and the leadership qualities that they're capable of.
Mm, okay, thank you for that. Now, we've seen from the CEO of Education Partnership Group, Sam Friedman.
Yeah.
According to him, some of the teachers deliberately marked down some of these grades to be able to fit in. That just comes across quite unpleasant, somewhat unkind, really. What are you,
I think
as a
for one thing,
teacher?
I'd ask Mr. Friedman to choose his words wisely. I think the thing most teachers do is be cautious
Mm,
in awarding grades, because you don't want to overestimate
yeah.
grade. So when he speaks like that, what he should have said was teachers were very cautious and very guarded in their awarding of grades. We have predictions, we have targets, but in being awarded, in awarding grades, you don't want to overestimate. You also don't want to, over predict, because if you over predict, you're setting the student up for a fall in the later future. So we're just cautious in our predictions. So say, for example, throughout year 12, you'd been working at a grade D,
Mm.
and efforts had been put in place, interventions, parental meetings, after school activities, extra homework, and that's been happening. You suddenly wouldn't expect us to predict you a B. It's just not going to happen.
Okay.
I have predicted you a C, and which is cautious, and and that's what we would have predicted, that the best discharge. But it depends on how far away you are, how many percentage points you were away from the next grade. So if
Mm.
you were on the lower end of a D, just scraped it. As a teacher, I had situations like that, and I stuck with the D because there was nothing to show. There was no
Nothing
other
to
evidence to
do.
show that you would have got a C or better. So I would have cautiously, in my case, I cautiously awarded the lower grade, just because the exam is not the only measurement. It's not the exam day is not the only measurement and the only testament. There's a work ethic,
Mm.
being able to operate at a certain level. And if
Okay.
I know that that child was, not operating where they should have been, then I'd give what grade you were working at. So
Okay.
we cautiously graded, and and that's what we all did. I mean, that's what the standardization and moderation process is for. We
Mm.
sit down and we discuss it, and because you never know. We also have our integrity to uphold, and that's why we're trusted as teachers, um, to be honest and truth in everything we do. So that was what the view we all took.
Okay, I understand that, and rightly so. But just to rewind a step back, you said earlier that your tools, the tools are not tied to grades. Fair enough, but we can't ignore the fact of just how important those grades are, because we've seen a lot of people in this time where their grades had changed, and how that affected them. So clearly the grades play an important role for these young people, and in as much as a teacher, you, as you rightly said, tools are not tied to grades, but for them, it would
It
seem like feel it
is.
would seem like it's the end of the world. I mean, can we not then say that the major role that it plays, it almost feels like it's a tick box, really, but but it's so important for the um,
It's also a measure. In some ways, it's a measure, and I would say, you remember last week we spoke about the maturity.
yeah.
So if you didn't get it this time, it doesn't mean you won't get it again. I don't know if and that's my point. I hear what they're saying. I know it's been a difficult year, but it's not the end of the world waiting a further 9 months to get to what you want to. You have people who want to be doctors, and they might start off in nursing, and then they learn the process, and they, because of what they've had to go through, they become better doctors,
Mm.
as opposed to the geek who's got 4 A stars and have got no bedside manner. I mean,
I hear you, but for a young person, it's all about speed.
and this is where parental and community support comes in. Um, the university fee is not cheap. 9,250 is a lot of money to consider, and
Mm,
I would ask parents and community groups to rightly advise the students and support them and encourage them and
mm.
praise them, applaud their efforts so far, but also, get them to think about the fact that, if you were to go into university unprepared, it's a difficult thing, and that's money that's non-refundable.
Okay, so coming forward a moment, you spoke about the fact that as teachers, your integrity was everything. But
Mm.
I think that from what we've seen in this whole debacle, teachers have been blamed somewhat, and your integrities have been challenged.
We're
The blame,
we're
the,
a political hot potato. We're used to this. I mean, this is nothing on edu Twitter, on Twitter sphere, in education. We're used to taking the blame. We take a blame for everything. We take a blame for the follies of the social worker. We take a blame for everything. So this is not anything new to us. And I think, being in teaching, we used to be in the political football. But the integrity of myself and my colleagues, and I speak for every teacher around the world, is very important to us. We went into this noble profession, um,
mm,
with very good intentions, and we will stand by it. That the politicians choose to do what they do, that shouldn't remove away from what we do. We do a very good job in producing these politicians. Some of them choose their moral compass will need to be checked out, but we produce good doctors, lawyers, engineers, um, teachers, administrators. We are the framework of the building of the world.
I,
So
I don't disagree with you. I absolutely agree with you. But on that line there that you're saying there, that as teachers you produce the doctors, the engineers, which you do because obviously you speak into their lives and you encourage them. You drive that you drive that education. But in this situation that we have now, we had a situation where computers were making the decisions instead of the teachers. And there was no human interference with the computers doing that. Well, I mean, would you still then be able to say that you guys are driving and producing these engineers and doctors as opposed to computers now being the ones that are making those decisions?
um, even with those computers producing the grades, we did have some input, and that's, in a way, this is uh, a moment for us, well, a moment where we've come out better, because we've proven that computers cannot do our job, and they won't be replacing us anytime soon. So
I think that's so important because we live in the age of computer, right? And
yeah.
in so many other, areas in our working lives, we're being threatened by computers taking over.
Yeah, and artificial intelligence is are programs that are programmed by humans in the first place. So I hear what they're saying with the formula, but the formula was not just down to computers. It was an algorithm that was inputted and a calculation was made. But even at that level, where the body, there should have been another standardization being done,
Mm,
and there should have been another level of moderation, carried out. I don't know if it was, I can't say about that, but ultimately it's come back down to the teachers to say, what grades have been ordered. And don't forget that we are also a regulated profession.
Of
We
course.
have we have standards to uphold, and if you're found afoul or of the rules in any way, then you will be struck off.
Okay. So what are you guys doing as teachers at the moment to help some of the students that are, you know, feeling completely let down at this time, and feeling that there's no way out? What are some of the things that you guys are doing to help them, and what are some of the things you can suggest
We've
to the
we've
students that are watching now that are equally feeling that way?
Okay, we found ourselves in this position before, where children haven't got the grades they wanted. This is not the first time; it happens every exam season. And what we do is we encourage those children. I've had in the past, and we will continue to have children who don't quite make it in the
Mm,
first round of Year 13 exams, and or in the first round of Year 12 exams, and they've had to resit the year. It's not always recommended. They might resit it with us, or they might go and resit it in a local FE college, and just to get to be better prepared for the university they want to go to.
mm,
So we found ourselves here before, and where children haven't quite got the grades, and it's just support. I mean, there's not much else we can do. You once you've spoken to the admissions office, and there's evidence to back up. I mean, before the pandemic, before we went away, children were asked to provide a portfolio of work. And if you appeal the grade and the exam admissions officer asks you for a portfolio of work, you should be able to produce that portfolio of work that supports your argument, or whichever the case, for a higher grade. And
okay.
I do know of cases where, you know, um, the exams officer have been spoken to. One child I know was offered, um, he got two A's and two A stars. And he was invited by Cambridge. I mean, invited, got a phone call from them to say, we really want to consider you, and we're going to, and he's got a place in aeronautical engineering. So, it's not, the admissions officers are people. And if you have the evidence to support what you're saying, then come on, you're going to get the place.
Okay, that's encouraging to know. But it, given what has happened, the pandemic being what it is, what are some of the things that are you guys preparing going forward, for you to better manage and handle the situation? I know that in some schools in Europe, for instance, the students were still able to go to school, or they were still able to take their exams, but here we were shut down. In your school, within the corridors of for teachers in the education sector, are there conversations to better manage? Should we have a similar pandemic and lockdown situation beyond us just sort of doing things online for the students?
A lot of what we do is policy driven, and you understand that we have to work within the guidelines of policy. um, so I know for next year we've been given, for next year's exams, for example, I could speak on that. We've been given the curriculum to overview,
Okay.
and there's a consultations have gone on as to what, for our opinion on what topic areas might will not need to be assessed.
Okay.
Will basically restructuring of the curriculum in such a way that the assessment will match what's been covered. So
Mm,
there might be some streamlining. There might be a different way of looking at, or looking at the curriculum, well, delivering the curriculum in such a way that manages and meets the expectations of the university. So there's been consultation, and we've also been giving guidelines as to what we're expecting. Some subjects have had no restructuring done. Other subjects have had some restructurings. For example, the performing arts have
mm.
had some restructuring done in the way the assessment goes ahead. So we've looked at that, and we do get consulted, but at some from away from, for us at the chalk phase, we get asked and we put our opinions forward, and then those are looked at, and then it's down to Whitehall.
There's another group of students that sometimes I think that they're often forgotten about, and that is our students that are homeschooled. We hear so much about the private school students and how well they're doing at the moment. But I think that our students that are homeschooled are often sometimes just sort of forgotten. What is the process for them at the moment? How badly hit were they affected? Did they fall through the crack, or were they still able to continue the process through?
I don't know too much about the homeschool system, but for you to for the homeschool students,
Mm,
they they would have been attached to a college
okay.
where they would have registered, or be online, where they would have registered their entry from the beginning, and then that is down to them is then down to that college to liaise with the child or with the families involved as to how to move forward. I've not read too much about it, but they're not entirely without, and they will have their local borough, the borough that they're attached to. They have an education officer that they will speak to, and their processes will be you know will be looked at, and their
Because
applications will be looked at. Yes.
it just occurred to me that for our students that are homeschooled, who then tells us what their mock grades would have been and so on. Who is the teacher? Because obviously the parent might be biased. Who is the teacher that would be able to tell us what they were likely to have gotten?
Oh, there should have been more. Even although the exams are now modular, where you do them at the end of 2 years,
Mm,
they're stages of assessments. And we in the school system use the stages of assessment. So there will be records of assessments to date.
okay. Okay.
And then, it won't be the parent. There'll be regulation. At every point, there's always regulation. It
Okay.
will be there'll be there'll be a certified individual looking at those grades and making that decision.
Okay, so for parents and students right now who are so worried, for those who feel that they've lost their place completely, for those who did not want to wait a year but may be forced to wait a year now for whatever reason, what would you say to them at this moment in time?
Um, Speak with your school's exam officer. um, Look at assess your center assessed grades. Once you've done that, if your center assessed grade was higher than the grade you were given, then get in touch with the university offers that you had,
Mm,
get the university that offered you a place, and then speak to them about you taking up the place. Universities have reassured us largely that they will consider those applications, and they're looking to make more spaces open. And not all the places were given out in the first instance.
okay.
So there's still some reserved spaces. I'm not assuring that there are a lot, but there are, university admissions officers are listening.
Okay. So for those who are not able to go to university at all, is it the end?
There are autumn resits.
Okay.
There are autumn resits, and they can be taken. I've just checked, and autumn resits are going on every year. There's always a summer and an autumn, so
Mm.
autumn is available for them to take a grade, and if they want to take that into the workplace or into their apprenticeships, then yeah, those are still open.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for enlightening us once again, Pamela, and also helping us to understand that it's not doom and gloom. There is still hope out there. Really
I mean,
appreciate your time.
sorry, there's been a lot of celebration. It's not all doom and gloom. I mean, largely in a lot of the schools, there's been um apart from the schools that have been outliers,
Mm,
even with those schools, there is evidence. As long as you have the evidence to support your claim, then no one will deny you. No one should deny you, if you understand what I mean. No one should. And
yeah.
we're lucky we live in a society where you can make a case to the highest courts, to the highest
Mm,
authorities, and though it's a hassle, but in the first place, no one's going. Everyone recognizes what's gone wrong, and the steps have been made to put them right.
mm,
So, there have been celebrations. I celebrate the students at the school where I teach, students up and down the country who, first generation students who are going to Oxford and Cambridge and all the top Russell Group regions. So it's been largely celebratory. And hopefully at the end of it, everyone will get what they should get, what they deserve.
mm. Well, what can I say? Pamela, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. It's
Thank you
good
for
to
having
know that it matters not, how you're feeling right now. If you can put together your portfolio of work, and as we've already heard today, just put your feelings down and just look at the issue ahead. There is hope for you. Pamela Adodo, thank you for being here. We really
Thank you,
appreciate
Priscilla,
you.
for having me. Thank you
Thank you
very
for
much.
your time. You have yourself a
You,
very good evening.
you
So for everybody, thank you all so much for staying with us, for tuning in. Please, on my YouTube channel, I'm so not used to this. Please subscribe, like, and share. I think I got in the right order. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. It's been wonderful. It's always a pleasure to have you. And I will be back next week. We're coming to the end of season one of the show, but don't worry, I'll be back again very soon. But join me next week for probably the final show in season one, where we are going to have more conversations about important issues that concerns you. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. There is still hope out there. Don't give up. Hang in there. Use the book by Lady Yemi. If you feel that your exam results have been, something's happened to it that shouldn't have happened, just put your things together and go and have a conversation with somebody. I am told they are listening. I believe they are. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.